Make every night a wonderful journey, no matter where you are. Good night, sweet dreams. The first story, The Faceless Man, Shadow Demon. Author's note: this is my first creepypasta based off real happenings in my house. I swear it's pursuing me. I can feel its existence no matter where I go. I can always feel the wretched being breathing right down my neck. I can undying my sense it watching down on me with that face, or should I say lack thereof. It's been pursuing me for years, ever since what happened to my family that should not have happened to them. They did not deserve that. Anyways, I am presently writing this in a low-price motel somewhere in Indiana. Running is all I have understood for the last 15 years. Or at least if it has been 15 years, all this started when my family and I moved into Bethel, Ohio. I still remember it like it was yesterday. My family and I have moved around a lot since we came to Ohio, living with relatives mostly, and changing schools every month. It took a toll on me now that I think about it. It took a toll on all of us. We were all ready just to settle down. My parents found this old house in the middle of town. It was a 2-story house with 3 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. I was told that it was a century old. There were 6 of us at the time. My family consisted of my 2 little brothers, my little sister, my parents, and I. It was all going smoothly, unpacking and cleaning up the old dust. After living in the house for around 5 weeks, I started noticing small, but still very strange things around the house. Things like the sound of footsteps and door. I did not give them any second thoughts, though. However, I started getting alarmed when my little brother complained of nightmares about a man with a shadowed face choking him. The really strange thing is, he'd said that he still felt himself being choked. Not that much later, my mother had also experienced terrible things with the being. One day, she was just sitting on her bed when out of nowhere, she couldn't breathe on one side of her neck, like someone was choking her. All of a sudden, the pressure just stopped. I don't think I slept one sound night in that house after that day. The experiences became progressively more alarming. In the following 2 weeks, we were terrorized by this strange spirit. Each morning, everyone would awaken with scratches. Well, everyone except for me. One time, it actually pushed my sister down the stairs. Things were getting too intense, so I decided to do a little research on the house. It turned out that a lot of people had died in that house, to the point where it temporarily even became a funeral home. I had noticed the corner of an old picture, so I pulled it out of the folder that it was contained in. It looked like it was from the early 1900s. But there was something not right about that picture, something that I just could not put my finger on. I looked closer, and that is when I saw it was a man in a tuxedo, and his face was nothing but a shadow. It was standing behind a corner of the house, peeking out from the side just as I was getting up. There it was, standing inches from my face. I could feel its breath. It smelled of death and decay. I felt panic seep into my body, but I blacked out. The last thing I recalled was a very loud scream followed by a very low-pitched laugh. When I woke up, I was alone. Not a soul was in the house. I searched years for my family, but I just could not find them. I looked all over the fucking country, but inside I know he took them. They are dead, with no doubt, in my mind, and I am the only survivor of my family. Why the hell am I still alive? I ask myself that question to this very day, so that is where it leaves us now. I know the thing is just toying with me. It could take me any time it wanted to, but I feel it just wants to see me suffer. I am not going to give it the satisfaction, and I am going to end it right here. So if anyone is still alive out there, anyone at all, I need to tell you that I am sorry. I am so very, very sorry. The second story, Shadow of Pestilence. Think of it as whatever you want. Be it a demon, a ghost, or Satan himself, hell. I'd even gotten the whole well there are plenty of people who smoke pot in that area, so you were probably just second-hand smoking the fumes and not even knowing its peel. I know what I saw, and it scared the fuck out of me. It was autumn, the sky was overcast, but it wasn't raining. The wind wasn't as strong, but it was far from a slight breeze, and the air was cool and crisp. Nobody was out in the small town of North Brookfield, Massachusetts. Call me crazy, but to me, it was the perfect day that day. I decided to go for a walk, bringing along my iPod and my favorite caramel effects. Either hoodie. I set out to the local graveyard. Now, I'm not some little cunt who goes around kicking over gravestones and doing crack on the tops of others. I pay respect to the dead every time I go in the day. I would find out that sometimes the dead don't share mutual respect. I took many of the side streets that, even if it wasn't a cool day in the middle of October, were empty. I've done this so many times before and since, and I've never had such a sense of foreboding like what I'd felt at that moment. Just over Witch Hunt by Rush, I could hear it growling coming from the bushes. Frozen in place, I could see the shrubs rustling back and forth through my peripheral vision. As soon as it all starts, it seems, it all ends when fear had released its grip. I had just assumed it was a mix of the family's dog and the wind blowing through the bushes. It made enough sense. I got to the gates of the cemetery in a second after I stepped onto the grounds. An intense gust of the coldest wind rushed through me, chilling me to the bones. Just as I had moved no more than 10 feet into the cemetery, and Smock Kirby by Celtic Frost began to play. Great, this is the last thing I need to hear and hear, I thought to myself. I loved the song anyway, so I didn't bother changing it. Moving further and further into the boneyard, I got more and more paranoid. I would see shadows moving in between the trees and headstones, darting out of extraordinary speed as I would turn to see who it was. At the top of the hill in which the cemetery surrounds, I could see a black, shadowy figure moving towards me from the north gate. I knew there was something wrong about seeing it there. I just wanted out as I realized that Don Smock Kirby was on for the third time. The thing was that I didn't have repeat on at the time. Going to turn the repeat off, I grabbed my iPod, and the burning was excruciating. It felt as if my hands were on fire, and it came as such a shock I fell to my knees, holding onto a headstone for balance. The grave was even hotter, and I took my hand off as soon as it made contact with the stone. It felt as if everything around me had been dipped into the lake of fire and brimstone itself. I look up and I see that the shadow has moved towards me. As I stare at it, I can feel its knowledge of my presence. It looks up at me with its piercing red eyes. It reaches its arms out and touches the adjacent tree. Upon its touch, the tree withers and dies as if it has been torched. The once vibrant colors of the leaves turn to a charcoal black and fall off. The bark peels off, showing a millennium of rot inside. Just then a stray cat walks in front of the thing, as if not even aware of its presence. It picks the stray up and In an instant the cat's shrill screams and wails can be heard above my dance mockery which, again, as repeated. I look on in horror as the flesh of the stray peels oftened its muscle and insides burst into flame as the still living tries in pain, trying desperately to escape. I barely noticed that I was soon after running with this thing following me. I just remember dozens of graves passing by me in a flash. I thought to myself, fuck, I don't remember it ever taking this long to get to the exit. The next thing I know, I'm in a pitch black void. I look to see the time on my iPod and it says that it is 7:57, which can't be true because that would mean I've been out of it for about 2 hours. Dance Mockery wasn't playing anymore, which I count as a blessing. Then the realization that I was utterly alone came to mind. I could hear nothing, not even my own breathing, which terrified me. Suddenly, I heard what sounded like paws coming downstairs. I'd fallen down into a crypt. Oh Christ, I think I'd have rather not though of that. My train of thought was one again broken by the slow methodical click of the mysterious noise. Click fuck it and through click 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 click. Click click. What followed was the longest and most terrifying growl I've ever had the displeasure of hearing. As my eyes were adjusting, I could make out the lurched over figure. Wait, no. I could then see that it was on all fours. Everything is coming clearer to me. It's a dog, for fuck's sake. I was this afraid of a dog. If it weren't for the damn thing, I would not know where the stairs were. Just then, it let out another low, guttural growl. Chills came running up and down my back as I realized it wasn't looking at me, but rather behind me. As I continued to come to, thousands of rats came running around me in a frenzy of primal fear and panic. The army of beasts ran over me and around me in their attempt to escape. Completely uninterested in the rats at all, the dog made its way closer to me and stood at my side, rolling at the unknown adversary. Well, I say unknown in the sense that I never saw its face in detail. I knew that whatever was behind me, watching me, was what I had seen by the cemetery's north gate. Suddenly, the dog begins to bark furiously and lunges behind me out of my sight, and I take this as my ticket to get out of there. I make my way up the stairs and I hear the dog squeal in pitiful agony as its last moments on earth were being taken away from it. I could feel the thing's rage now, as I sensed it giving me chase. I get up out of the crypt and, to my greatest delight, I could see the south gate, the gate by which I'd made entrance. Giving it my all, I sprinted for the gate and I could hear the beast's enraged screams as it pursued me past the many graves that would bring me to safety. I lunged at the gate and onto the sidewalk and closed it behind me. I continued to run, and as I got to the end of the street, I turned to look back, and whatever was chasing me was gone. I looked up to the top of the hill, even though it couldn't have even gotten that far. Nothing. All I saw were the rows of headstones and trees that littered the graveyard. A feeling of relief rushed over me when I had affirmed that there was indeed nothing there. I did run home nevertheless, and didn't bother stopping until I had reached the front door. It was past 8:30 and my parents were pissed beyond belief. I simply told them that I had tripped and fell down on the sidewalk and lost consciousness for a while. I then proceeded to tell everyone I know, but, they don't believe me. I can't really blame them either. I do know what I saw, however, and what I saw has scarred me for life. You'd better believe that I say the Our Father before I take a little walk through the cemetery. The third story, the story of the Hellhound. It was the year... Religion spiked at its peak, people. begging their higher powers to save them from what they would most inevitably succumb to. Monasteries began hosting their services in smaller buildings, allowing only a select few to come in and pray with them. One such group was a tiny horde of monks. They stashed themselves away in a plague-free zone of the city. They were cruel, and they used the mask of hope to bribe people into paying what little they had to be saved. As the months went by, and their trickery grew, people began whispering of a beast, an evil beast. Its maw was that of a dog, with jaws of an alligator, strong, long, and full of teeth. Its eyes well. It had eyes of the darkest depths, pools of red spiraling through orbs of black smoke, death in every glance it gave. Finally, its body was that of a wolf, long and narrow, sleek and poised, yet stealthy and unsuspecting. Huge, they described it as huge, much larger than any pet that would have been spotted around the village. Yet, the poser monks brushed this off, laughing at the stupidity and, as they called them, sick delusions. One night, a storm raced through the area, giving a welcome relief to most areas. The buildings were damaged, but there would now be fresh water to give to the ill, something everyone had wanted for a while. One building in particular seemed the worst hit. The monastery. One of the monks rushed out of the large oak doors, hinges creaking as they swung shut once more. He made his way to a large shed, the wood peeling to the side, windows busted, and door caved in. Horrified, he scrambled through the ruins of what once was, scooping up jars full of coins, checking over his precious gold. The other posers came out as well, surveying the damage, speaking quietly of where they would now hide their lies. The monk who had been coddling over his fortune happened to stand up at that moment, a sharp black blur, one of the busted boards on the back, making not a sound as it went from one point to the next, zigzagging further and further away. Finally, it reached the top of a small hilltop, twisted its massive neck around and locked eyes with the monk. Chills raced up his spine, hair standing on end. His hands went numb, dropping the jars to his feet with a quick step back. The beast simply stretched its leathery lips back in what looked like a grin before sliding off into the shadows where it disappeared. In a stupor, the monk stumbled back to the monastery. What had he just seen? Was he going crazy? Was he getting sick? That night, as everyone lay sound asleep, tales of thievery in their heads, one man didn't have the same pleasure. His dreams were filled of the canine-like animal, its bony spine poking through the papery flesh and thick fur. He'd scream for mercy as it ran to him, and jolt awake just as it'd leap, jaws opened wide with acidic green drool stretching from fang to fang. Finally, in one dream, it was different. The setting had changed to a graveyard, the hound weaving in and out of chalky grey headstones, chuckling lowly under its breath. Once, voice echoing around the frightened man. You see me. You're doomed from day one twice. You aren't so fortunate. 'Tis nothing but dead you will become thrice. I'll find you, rob you from your bed, rip you limb from limb and decapitate that empty head. It cackled at its rhyme, disappearing in a smoky haze as it leapt off of a weeping angel. And as it the shadows paused, singeing the grass beneath its weight, gasping for air, he awoke the rest of the day. He remained skittish and reclusive, searching endlessly through books, even rushing into town to find people who he heard speaking of this eternal nightmare. Yet, no one seemed to be able to answer anything. Each shake of a head and a laugh sent him into a state of ultimate hopelessness. On his way back to the monastery, The smell of sulfur wafted through the air, catching his attention through morbid curiosity. As he searched the area, his mind reeled with what it could be, and just when his heart began settling, his worst thoughts became reality. There, standing in the middle of the path, was the hellion, its long ears domed back against its head, evil grin exposing all of its fangs, tail switching back and forth with waves of ebony smoke following in suit. However, just as soon as it was there, it was gone, simply vanishing, not knowing what to do. The crazed monk scrambled back to his home, where he locked himself into his quarters for the day. That night, it was the same routine, the nightmares, the stupid little rhyme, and that horrible smell this time, accompanied with blood-clushed screams and cries for forgiveness. Months passed. The monk grew sick. His encounters with the townsguard only exposed him more so to the disease that had been washing over the area, not to mention the stress and paranoid existence, never peeking out the window, never going anywhere alone. He had, as it seemed, reverted back into being a child scared of the dark. The other men lost interest in his ramblings, gave up on trying to help him, and went on with their scam, though he hadn't seen his demon in quite a while. He knew it was there. He lay awake at night, feeling as if something was watching him through the window. Yet, he refrained from looking, knowing if he did, it'd be his last chance. Another storm rolled in from the mountains, the cold front meeting the summer heat, twisting and turning into its own demonic presence. The tornado tore through the town, uplifting houses, and even most of the church's bell tower. Upon the storm's end, every one of the men piled out of the church, some taking it more logical than others. The night air was thick with smoke and debris, causing most of them to head inside to wait out the night for morning, planning on what they would do. However, the crazed monk stayed behind, cursing under his breath, pacing back and forth, begging for it to stop. He knew what caused this. That creature caused it. Of course it did. What else would explain it? Chuckling rose from the downed bell tower, the rubble moving smoothly as the beast walked out. Its muscles rippled beneath its fur, long legs walking in front of one another as it slowly made its way towards the man. Screams that, as all the others heard, loud screams, before they made it out the door. Loud thumping sounding like nothing else but the large thudding of paws running down the door halted them. It would be moments before they grew up enough courage to peek out, and once there they found nothing. The man was gone. There was no dog, there was no sulfuric smell, there was no evidence anything had even happened. In a panic, they piled back inside, only to stop at a small horror in front of them. There, in the oak door, sat a pauper, and smoke rolled from the indention. Spitter. But every one of them knew what it was. That's when they heard it behind them. Once you see me, huh? To this day, the paw print remains on the door. What a hellhound IGHT looked like, drawn by my friend. Another tale of the vicious hellhound resonated throughout North American slave traders pre-freedom era. On the eastern side of Africa, there were several large tribes, which had just been taken by slavers. These tribals were taken on a train across Africa, where they were locked in a solid iron cart. Many of these men died, and so did their families. The dogs of these dead men were said to sprint along the side of the train, the eyes burning like coals on the end of a branch flickering in the wind, and fire burning on their paws as they pursued the train through the night. howling a mournful song for their dead masters.